Welcome to episode 165 of The Space in Between. I'm your host, Phoebe Leona, and today it's all about giving you your permission slip um, because sometimes shit goes wrong and it might not have anything to do with what you're doing because you might be doing everything right. So, how do we respond to that? So, I guess that's a long winded title, but the title for this episode is This is Your Permission Slip when shit goes wrong, even when you are doing everything right. So we'll get to we'll get to some stories around that in just a little bit, but I have a few announcements that are happening here in Nomad Land that I want to make sure that you know about. As I'm recording this, we have just another week or two before our retreats in Bali are taking place in April 1st through the 7th with MJ, Where Friends Gather. This is going to be a really special experience for those who are coming on. She has a beautiful group already coming together. This is MJ's return to Bali at this beautiful partnerships location, Floating Leaf. I've hosted two retreats there in the past. MJ was on one of them. She is an amazing yoga teacher, and she really wanted to bring her group back to Floating Leaf to experience Bali, experience the culture, experience, you know, just the energy about the Balinese and give you all an opportunity to experience where new friends gather here in Bali. And she's a yoga teacher. She's also a Movement 109 facilitator. And she's also bringing in a sound healer. So this will be a beautiful balance of the outer journey of experiencing the culture and the food and the people, as well as this inner journey of connecting within yourself and within the community. Our second retreat that's happening in Bali is with Marie and Martin, who will be leading their retreat, Return to Yourself, which is April 7th through the 14th. And this is going to be a very deep inward journey. They're bringing in this idea and the practices of alchemy and how to alchemize the life that you want to create by returning deeply inward into yourself. And they have such beautiful offerings of sound healing, of yoga, of the Akashic records. This is how I met them years ago. Back when I was in Bali, they did this beautiful offering of sound healing and Akashic records, family constellations, so much more. They have so many different modalities that they're bringing into this very special retreat to return to yourself. So you can think of this one as more of a deeper immersion within and having the arms of Mama Bali holding you tightly and lovingly for this return. So those two retreats are coming up. There are just one or two more spots available for each of those. So if you're interested, you can follow the link that is in our show notes here. Also, what I'd love to shout out to right now are my fellow retreat leaders. If you have a retreat that's coming up in 2024, 2025, that is on the books and you're ready to share it with the world and promote it and maybe even get a few more people in there for your retreat, we're hosting a global event. This is a festival or a online retreat, if you will, where we're bringing together these amazing retreat leaders like you together to not only come together in community, but to have people come to you and experience you, to widen your reach, widen your audience, and have them experience you and have them get an experience of what it would be like to be on a retreat with you, and hopefully have them come join you wherever you are hosting that next retreat. So we have a lot of perks within that one special event. This will be in May. So if you want to be a part of that, and then you will have not only that one event where you will be able to promote your retreat and get that support, but we will also have a year full of marketing for that retreat and a lot of other back end support for you so that you can lean back into community. You can lean back into the resources that we provide at nOMad and feel supported so that you can really truly thrive as the leader that you are. So if you're interested in that, there will also be a link here to apply. There are only a few more spots available. We're only taking 10 retreat leaders. And this is, again, an exclusive opportunity so that you can be really seen and heard and felt by a new audience and connect more deeply with them, right? And you are going to be highlighted there, or you're not getting lost in the mix. So if you want to be a part of that, you have to apply by the end of this week. When this is released, well, I guess let's say by the end of March, because I'm not quite sure what the date that this will be released, but by the end of this month, we will keep the applications open and we will be accepting those spots. So if there's still spots available, I highly suggest go apply right now and we will be in touch with you as soon as we see that application is in, and we'll talk about the next steps if you have been accepted. Okay. So, and then my dear friends who are not retreat leaders and you're thinking, ooh, that kind of sounds like fun. I'd love to go on a virtual retreat and see what it would be like to go somewhere around the world with these people. I will be sharing more of those details very soon in April. So, those are my announcements. And now, what I want to go back to is the title of our episode for today is Here's Your Permission Slip. Because when shit goes wrong, even when you're doing everything right, right, there's some sort of gift here. And I want to share a few different stories to connect these dots here. So, I'm thinking about this is what I like to do here in Nomad Land and the space in between is always pull the curtain back. Pull the curtain back. And because a lot of times, especially when we host these retreats and when I travel, people see on social media like, oh, I love that. You look like it was so amazing. And of course, we're going to show you all of the amazing highlights because we want you to be there. But there's also some challenges, and not to deter you from coming on a retreat, because I think you should definitely come on a retreat, but I like to be real and authentic and share here a little bit more about the behind the scenes, yeah, behind the curtain, um, because this is where the real transformation happens. Yeah, we can put the photos up of us all smiling and being in paradise, and that looks so amazing, but the real transformation is a lot of the times what we're not taking pictures of because we're being fully present, fully immersed. Uh, and that's where the transformation's occurring. So I'm pulling back the curtain today to share some stories um, with you, to share some lessons about when there are challenges that happen. And I'm also going to share a personal story of what I've been going through the last several months, all to connect again this idea of when things aren't going as planned or going right, right? Even when you think that you are doing everything right, I'm showing up, bringing my 100%. And how do we I'm learning this too. This is why I'm sharing it today is how do we make that shift, right? So we don't turn into resentment, right? Of I did everything right and shit's still going wrong. And oh, I'm gonna, we could turn really hard and cold and resentful. We could also turn into playing victim, right? Woe is me, everything's happening to me. And so these stories that I'm going to share with you and my response and the people that were involved, their response is just to be as an inspiration for you and to do a bit of inquiry for yourself, right? For yourself of looking at your life and looking at what might not be quote unquote going right for you right now, but how can you make that energetic shift? So, um, yeah. So let me go back to Mexico. Mexico, we hosted two retreats, really special retreat leaders that I was leading with. We had Stephanie James at our first retreat in Sayulita. And Sayulita, let me just tell you, an amazing place. Might not be the place that I would go to again during Carnival, where there are music festivals happening. Um, I might go there if I'm going to a music festival and I want to be a part of it, but for a retreat, maybe not so much. Um, so I want to go back even further. So when Stephanie James asked me to host this retreat, about 6 or 7 months ago, I was like, hell yes, I love her. We met at our leadership summit that we hosted last year, felt an instant connection. She's been on this podcast a couple of times, so you probably already, if you heard her, you could already hear that connection between the two of us. She asked me, I was actually like really honored because she works with all of these amazing people, that you would know who they are. Yeah, she gets to interview all these amazing people in the healing, wellness, spiritual world. And she was like asking me to host a retreat with her. And I was like, really, me? Um, and so we had this beautiful connection. We had never met in person. And so we're meeting in person at the airport a day before our group comes. She decided to rent us a car so we'd have a little bit of freedom to move around. And we get in the car, we're learning about each other and, building this sisterhood. And she gets pulled over for speeding. And she's really going the safe speed everybody else is, but she's a white, blonde, definitely looking American woman. And she gets pulled over, and you have to pay basically the policia like 100 something dollars on the spot, because that's the game, right? That's the game that you play when you rent a car in Mexico. So we both were like feeling a little stressed, a little nervous, and like, oh God, what's going to happen here? And he's like, you have to pay this cash right away, or else you have to come back and go to court. And during the middle of our retreat, we're like, no, we can't do that. And so we're freaking out, but then we handle it and we take it on. And this could have been that moment. That could have been a moment where there was stress and we could have both responded in negative ways to them, to him. I could have been mad at her or whatever. There could have been something there that created some stress and set the stage for our retreat. But we both just kind of laughed and we're like, okay, so that happened. And then there was a little bit more, like some interesting things that happened before we got into the hotel with our parking situation and everything. And it was like, those days when you're traveling and all you want to do is just get onto your bed and like maybe take a shower and then just like sit on the beach and like relax. But it was like there were a lot of these little challenges and micro challenges that were getting us there. And I just remember us getting into the hotel and we were just laughing about it. And it's like, okay, we're in good hands. Both of us are lighthearted people. We're going with the flow. There's some challenges here. They're a little wonky, but we're going to go and we're going to have some food and enjoy our journey together. And it was just so perfect. Um, the next day, our group comes. It's beautiful. The group is such a beautiful, special group. And I have to say, I was so impressed with these women. They're people that I have not really worked with in the past, and just to see the grace that they had for each other, but then to be able to witness them as they went through this journey, and it was just 5 days where we got to see themselves giving themselves that same grace. So a lot of these women were a little bit older and they had done everything for their families. They had done everything for other people. And what they were all coming to realize on this retreat was they had not really given that their own spark to themselves, because our retreat was called Ignite Your Spark, Reignite Your Spark. So they had given their light out to the world, but they hadn't really taken that time to honestly give themselves the gift of their own light. And so we got to witness these women remembering their light and reconnecting to it. And it was so special. And the first day we went around and we pulled these divine feminine cards where each person pulled a card and it was going to be their guide for their retreat, for their journey as they were walking through this transformation. And the woman right before me, the last woman in our group, pulled Kali. Now, if you know the goddess Kali, if you don't, I'll tell you really briefly. Kali messes some shit up. She is like a tornado. She goes and she destroys everything that is there for you to start all over again. And so she was not aware of Kali, but Stephanie and I were, and we saw that card and we're like, uh-oh. Little did we know, we thought, ooh, this is going to be a hard one for her. Little did we know it was going to be a hard one for all of us because we were all committed to being in the circle and having all of the divine feminine goddesses that we had pulled, all of them were coming on our collective journey. So the very last day, or not the very last day, the one of the last days, we had this beautiful ceremony on the beach, a cacao ceremony. This lovely human that lives on in Sayulita, sound healer, very special soul. She facilitated this sound healing cacao ceremony for us. Beautiful. Everyone had a beautiful experience. It's right at sunset. It's like, ah, how could you imagine anything more peaceful and more blissful? Next day, the woman who pulled Kali, she goes down. She is sick. And then it's like dominoes. We each get some sort of reaction, which I too, I believe it was the cacao. There were many other theories. I truly believe, I won't go into the details of why I think it's the cacao, but I had proof from my body that it was the cacao. But we it was almost like it was completely comical. And I'm going to share this with you because I have had so many retreats where, like, I would say maybe 50% of the retreats that I've hosted, people have gotten sick. Mostly because, when we're traveling, our belly, some people have digestive issues and traveling messes them up. But then a lot of times, we're going to places where you're not supposed to drink the water. People accidentally drink the water or have the ice cubes or go to ceremony and have a little bit of the blessing that's been given to them. And so their body responds. Now, this was the first time that my body responded. Usually I'm like the retreat leader that I'm like, I'm sorry, you guys are, what I get to be the one that's the caretaker and take care of them and say, okay, we're going to adjust some things here so that you can all rest. Yeah. It's one of those things you have to do as a retreat leader when everybody's sick or a majority of people are sick. You have to go with the flow. You have to make sure that everybody feels safe and well and good. And this was the first retreat that I had been on that not only was I sick, my co-facilitator was sick too. We were both throwing up. I was throwing up. I had this beautiful dress on. We were going the next night on a boat to this Mexican Cirque du Soleil that was outside in this like big I can't think of the word, but outside in this space. And it was just like hundreds of people there watching this event. And I'm on the boat. I'm in my beautiful dress and I'm straddling the trash can, just throwing up multiple times. And then later on, after the boat was over, I'm throwing up in a bag. Like it was so not good. There was no way that I could have control over my body. There was no, let alone the control of making sure everybody else was safe and good. So it was like we all had to fend for ourselves to a certain extent. But what I was noticing, even in the midst of my head being in a bag throwing up, is that everybody was coming together and taking care of each other. Because again, we had these women who were just always in that space of giving to others. But what I was witnessing, that they weren't just giving to others and putting their side, they were actually being very vulnerable and receiving the support from each other where maybe they hadn't done in the past because they were the one who had to like take care of everybody else who was sick. They were actually leaning back and receiving that support, receiving the support of our beautiful driver who was making sure we all had we all had the bags in the car. I mean, not to just, destroy his car, but he was like very sweet and very thoughtful and made sure that we had everything that we needed and just stopped to make sure that everybody was, if somebody else was getting sick, like that we were all good. It was just such a gift to be able to witness these women receive that gift of being nurtured and taken care of in the midst of this chaotic experience. So I share that story because I can laugh about it right now. But to share again that sometimes things just are completely out of our control. And we did not wish Kali to be there, but Kali did, and she broke down some boundaries, and she broke down some old beliefs about we can't receive, right, that support and that love. And she allowed us to accept that. And all the other beautiful goddesses, I had Mary Magdalene, like all the beautiful other goddesses were there to take care of us in the midst of all of that chaos. Something else that and so there was a gift there, right? So that's the point of what I'm sharing, is that even in the midst of the chaos, there's some sort of gift that you can walk away from. Um, the other situation, the second retreat we went to, was so magical. Oh, and I'll just mention, because I mentioned this before about Sayulita. It is a very, very special place. It was during Carnival. There was concerts happening until about 3 a.m. Yes, our retreat place was feeling it. Like, not only could didn't just have my headphones in, but my body could feel the thumping until 3 a.m. But we could have had a group of grumpy women, but the beautiful thing again was, because Stephanie and I had that experience where we were challenged at the beginning, we're like, okay, let's go with the flow. We were able to create that container for other people to go with the flow. Yeah. We could have had a bunch of grumpy people saying, I don't want to be here because of this pounding, but we made the most of it. We got to make it a bonding experience. Um, a choice that we might not make in the future, questions that we might ask if we go to Mexico during, February, March, Carnival kind of time. We might ask those questions. But we live and we learn, and we let ourselves, have that grace of, yeah, we didn't know. It's all good, right? Letting go of those uncontrollables, letting go of the uncontrollables of people's health, our own health. And so when I got to the second retreat center, this was a very different location. This was in the mountains, 2 hours west of Mexico City. Very, very special, very quiet, such a special place. I'm looking forward to bringing people here to this place multiple times. um, we got to experience the monarch butterflies start to make their migration back to the United States. So they were, basically, if you don't know anything about the monarchs, they migrate to Mexico into these mountains for about August to about March every year. And they're just surviving during this time of year. They're just surviving. And then they start to migrate in March, when the weather starts to change, and they start to migrate back to the United States. And this happens like every 3 or 4 generations, right? Because the lifespan of a monarch is not very long. So this particular generation is a rather long generation, just surviving in order to maintain, the legacy of the next generation of monarchs that will go and fly north to the States and to Canada and continue on. So this was the energy was definitely different. It was a little bit, more grounded, very much immersed in the elements. We had waterfalls going, so we heard water, every night that would just drift you into sleep. Very, very peaceful. We had somebody who came and she was sick when she arrived, so we had to kind of modify some things so she would feel included and safe and healthy and everything like that. But what I want to share about this story was, this retreat in particular, is there was a little bit of miscommunication with the property and me, and this was around money. And this is something that a lot of people have, challenges with, was talking about money, getting clear about money, and it can cause a lot of, dissonance. And so there potentially could have been a lot of dissonance between myself and this property, because they gave me a quote that was, you know, misleading. And then when I got there, was like, oh no, that's not what you said. And I won't go into all the details, but it wasn't just a couple of $100, it was about $1,000 difference, which can be significant when could have easily made that part of how we priced out our retreat. And so now is coming into, my cut and Kim's cut. And it could have created dissonance there with her too, right? She wanted to know that I was taking care of the funds and making sure everything was, X, Y, and Z, everything was, all lined up. And now she could see that as like I cut it, my miscommunication, my misstep could have affected what she was walking home with. But this was a moment that we could all invite ourselves into that conversation, and everybody involved, we were like, how do we meet each other? Right. We want to keep these partnerships going. They wanted to create, the property wanted to continue that partnership with me because they loved the type of people that we were bringing in. And they saw our vision of nOMad and how we could co-create together and bring more groups in together, and potentially help them build their business. And Kim saw the partnership that we had and how we want to continue to host retreats together. So we could have taken this miscommunication around money and created dissonance and like not build any further. But we all leaned in and we said, you know what? Yeah, that's a big number, but we want to build something bigger that this number won't even be significant in the long run. Right. So again, this is not something that nobody really did wrong. It was just a miscommunication. We did everything right. He wrote the email in the way that he thought it. I received it in the way that I thought it, but there was something in between that got lost. And so when we are still doing everything right, things might go a little wrong. And how to respond to that? So a lot of times when I look at my response, I mean, I used to be a little bit more erratic, but I've made a conscious decision of saying, like, the question that I always ask, and I said this many times, is this necessary? If this response that I'm about to make, is it necessary? And I listen to my body and see, does it really need to respond in the way? Like, do I not feel safe here? Do I need to lash out, right? To make sure that I, protect myself, right? Um, or am I lashing out just because I'm feeling, threatened emotionally, or somebody's going to, no, I'm fine. I'm completely safe. Okay. Well, then what's the next step? How can I remain steady? How can I be open to there's another version of what's going on here, right? It's not just my perception, but there are other people's perceptions here too. How can I widen my scope and see another perspective? And then how can I build on this and see that there's a lesson here, there's a teaching here that I can learn from, and maybe even open up doors to new possibility? Maybe I can see that there is this beautiful partnership between these two lovely women, and we're learning how, as we can navigate obstacles, that we can work together. These are the people that I want to continue a relationship with by working, people who can go with the flow. They're not going to lash out at me or control things and create a dissonant relationship. These are people that have given us both space and grace to grow and expand. The participants that we've magnetized are also able to go with the flow and go and expand and really give themselves that permission to experience transformation, because transformation isn't always pretty. Transformation isn't pretty. Let's just be real. Transformation isn't pretty. It's really messy. And so, yes, we can put the photos, if they're genuine, they're authentic, putting up the photos on social media of these beautiful places that we've chosen to host a retreat. And we're smiling, we're having good food, we're having good conversations. But there's also that layer inside of us that we're experiencing some messy stuff, right? But that's the beautiful balance of life, that there's no right or wrong, there's no good or bad. There's no light or dark. It's all together. That is the alchemy of living here. So the last story that I want to just share briefly, because this was a very deep teaching for me, um, just another layer that I realized in just the past couple of days. So I might have shared in the past, I've been dealing with some reproductive issues the last 11 years, and they like ebb and flow here. I've had to have, with fibroids, I had to have a DNC a couple of years ago. And then I thought everything was good, worked on a lot of my inner work of like why that was building up in my body. And, I'm a healer. I like to see things head on and focus on making sure that that doesn't happen again. And so in December, when I got an ultrasound again, and there was something that was the size of an orange growing inside of me, I got really frustrated because I was like, no, I do everything right. I do everything right. I eat healthy, I exercise, I stay positive, I meditate, you know, I'm doing everything right. And so I decided to do more. I thought, I'm going to up the ante. I'm not going to get the surgery, even though she recommends it. I'm going to work with an Ayurvedic practitioner. I'm going to get all the quantum healing that I can from all my healer friends. I'm going to do 3 hours of meditation and pranayama and physical practice. And I'm going to do everything and battle this out. I'm going to conquer this growth that's inside of me. I was like, yes. So I gave myself a couple of months. I had to release some things during the retreats just because it was like too challenging being holding space for other people. But then I thought, I'm going to infuse joy into this. I'm going to do everything I can to like really, just enjoy the moment. And that's going to also battle this thing that's growing inside of me. And then I get this ultrasound as soon as I get back, and nothing's changed. And I felt like I failed. I failed my body. I failed myself. I failed my healer friends who were helping me. And I had this like victim moment where I was like, oh. And that drive from getting the ultrasound to visiting my grandmother, about 6 hour drive with all the traffic, was horrendous. I am not going to go into all the details, but it was not a good moment for Phoebe. The only person who knows what happened in that car is my boyfriend, who I told. Um, yeah, not a good moment for Phoebe. Definitely sad, definitely mad, definitely scared, definitely feeling all of the feelings. But then I woke up the next day, I took a shower, went to sleep, woke up the next day, and I was like, you know what? I was doing everything. I was doing everything. What do I teach here is learning how to be, just be with what is. And I was using healing as a weapon. It's like, of course. I still had these fists in the air trying to fight things out. It's like, this is the story of my life. It's just like, let's just battle it out and figure it out. And I was like, okay, I am surrendering. The universe was like, you're going to sleep. Somebody else is going to deal with this, and you're going to wake up and it will be gone. And you are just going to have to surrender and be. And so that's the lesson here that I learned from that was you don't always have to do everything right. You can just be. You can just be who you are, and the things are going to come. The obstacles are going to come. The joy is going to come. It's all going to come. It's just how you respond to it. How are you going to receive it? How are you going to surrender to it? That's going to make you the person that you are. The other thing that I was noticing, so um, do I want to talk a little bit about that? I'm just thinking because I had some notes here. I guess the other piece of this that I thought was interesting, because I noticed this when I was leading my training the other day with Tribe, our yoga teacher training, was I was telling them about we were doing an exercise that my teacher Elizabeth and Andy's Dare had passed on called Here and Now I'm Feeling, and it's about witnessing sensation in your body, and the teaching she had for me when I was sitting there, I was leading a 300 hour a few years ago when I was really dealing with a lot of sensations of pain related to this experience that I'm dealing with. Um, and I remember bringing my group to my trainees to her studio, and she was teaching us Here and Now I'm Feeling, and I was doing the practice too. And she heard me talk about pain, and she's like, no, 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 we don't use the word pain here. Pain is not a sensation. We've got to get really curious about it. Does it have a sound? Does it have a color? Does it, like, getting objectifying it a bit, pulling yourself away from it and seeing it for what it is? Because when we say pain, pain still unconsciously is attaching the old story to it. You're constantly carrying that pain that old wound with you. And so when she started to talk about this, I did change my relationship to it. And I did work with a lot of healers at that round before I got my surgery. But what I'll say is, even though I needed that surgery, I didn't have the sensation that felt like pain for months before. And I think one of the reasons I was so surprised when I got the ultrasound a couple of months ago and she was like, there's an orange growing inside of you, was like, I had no idea. All I felt was pressure. I didn't feel any sensation of pain because that story wasn't mine anymore. Yes, the wound was still there, but I wasn't carrying the old story of pain with me anymore. What I was carrying was this pressure that I put on myself, this pressure to keep having to do things and be right. This pressure that I put on myself of being all that I can be in my business and for my people that I serve. And so this pressure is going to be alleviated soon. And I don't have to do anything. I just have to go to sleep. And then I'm just going to have to show up in the light, my world. So I also invite that for you. If you have some sort of sensation in your body that's speaking to you, this is just a reminder to get curious about it and ask, like, what is it here for? What's the story it's telling me? What is it? What's that message that it has for me today? And what I like to do is just put my hands onto that place, wherever it might be, and breathe and let it be seen and heard and felt by your hands and say, what do you have for me here today? That was part of my daily rituals, still is, as I'm dealing with this orange inside of me. Like, what do you bring for me today? What do you have for me today? And you don't have to do anything for it. Just be with it. Just be with it. A lot of these times when we have obstacles in our life, when we have sensations in our body, when we have difficult conversations between people that we need to have, a lot of times we just need to let it be seen and heard and felt. We don't have to do anything or fix anything and make it all right. We just sit and we listen. We listen to the person that's in front of us. We listen to the sensation in our body. We listen to that big challenge that is here, maybe again, and just listen and say, what are you here for me to do today? What do I need to learn here today? What's your gift? So that is my story, all my stories in a nutshell, to pass on to you again this invitation to give you the permission slip to let go of having to be right, to do everything right, to just be. Just allow yourself the grace to experiencing you in this moment, even if it's a messy moment. Experience yourself in this moment and give yourself that permission to love yourself, even in the midst of the messiness, even if you have your head in a bag throwing up in public in a pretty dress where everything should have gone right and everything, my hair looks so great. Now it has vomit in it, right? Now there's vomit in your hair. Well, how are you going to respond? How are you going to still love yourself in the midst of that mess? That is my gift for you today, is to love yourself in the midst of your own mess. Love yourself even when things aren't going right. Love yourself even when you feel you've done everything right and shit is still going wrong. Even when you know or feel that you were the one who did something wrong. Love yourself even in the midst of that mess. All right, my dear friends, have a beautiful day. Continue to love yourself, continue to be the beautiful, radiant one that you are. I hope that you can continue to join us here on our podcast. Maybe you can join MJ, Marie, and Martin in Bali. Maybe you can join us as a leader at our global retreat. And maybe you can join us in May as one of those participants or something else that we do here in Nomadland. I hope that we can spend more time together very soon. And I look forward to doing that with you and being with you. All right. Have a beautiful day. Bye.